Hi everyone, I'm Jenean Merkel Perelstein, and today we're going to be talking about how to get out of your own way and create lasting change in your life so that you can become the powerful and recognized leader that you're meant to be. I'm so glad that you found your way here to me today, and I'm excited to share with you some of the information that I've shared with countless clients over the years that have helped them to take ownership of the ground that they're walking on so that they can step into the greatness that they know is there for them. And I'm going to share some of these tips with you today. So today we're going to talk about exactly what goes on in our brain when we get in our own way. We're going to talk about some tips exactly about how to get around that, what to do about that. And then lastly, we'll also talk about why this makes a difference for you in clearing the path so that you can step into a high-performing lifestyle of lasting change and lasting performance. So I thought that I'd start today by talking a little bit about myself and how I get to be here to talk with you about creating lasting change in your life and standing in your strength. As I said, my name is Jenean, and my journey with learning the language of success started about 20 years ago. My husband and I live in Flagstaff, Arizona. It's a mountain town, a couple hours drive outside of Phoenix. And we were driving up to Flagstaff from Phoenix late one rainy night and keeping each other awake with conversation. And we were talking about different people in our life who seemed to have different results. And it was interesting because on the one hand, we knew of a group of people that seemed to have the Midas touch. You know, these are the folks who, no matter what obstacles were thrown in their path, they would just sort of cruise on over it like it was a little speed bump. And anything that they went out to reach for, they got. And then there was this group of people, on the other hand, who had similar access to resources to the big three, you know, wealth, power, and prestige. But for some reason, they would come across a roadblock, you know, and it would really stop them in their tracks. And so, you know, they never got the girl, they never got the job, they never got the clients, they didn't get the wealth, and they didn't get the things that the people over here got. And it was interesting to us as we were discussing this because of the fact that they did have equal access to resources. You know, they were the same kind of person. We wondered then, you know, is there something that these people are doing specifically to help them, to keep them in their own way? And is there something that these people are doing specifically to make sure that the obstacles didn't stop them, to make sure that they could ensure success? And it was an interesting enough conversation that I embarked then on this journey of figuring out what the people in these two different camps were doing, because I wanted to learn. I wanted to apply it to my own life. Now, I'm blessed with this discipline of sociocultural anthropology. At the time, I was teaching anthropology at Northern Arizona University, and I'm blessed because I've been taught to look at things through the levels of pattern recognition across cultures, across time, across space, and even across disciplines. And so my journey of inquiry took me to many different cultures. It took me across the campus in many different fields of study. I went into the neurosciences, which I'll talk a little bit about today. I went into psychology. Certainly went into history, and I learned that many of the ways that people become successful across cultures, across disciplines, is startlingly similar, no matter where you are, no matter your socioeconomic strata, no matter the access to these kinds of resources that tend to keep people in places of power. People who don't have access to that have access to these tools as well, and I'll share with you why. And it became so fascinating to me that I collected a great body of research on this language of success throughout the years. Now, I would love to tell you that I would try these lessons on for size, and my life became wonderful, and I just had this linear progression into greatness, and here I am today talking to you from that place. But the reality is that I was doing this as a hobby. I was doing this at the time because I enjoyed it and it was fun. And it was sporadic for me. And, sporadic efforts truly yield sporadic results. And so I had more of like a circular roundabout path towards success. And then at one moment in my life, I had moved from academia into the business world, and I was working as a CEO of a regional nonprofit. And I thought that I had made it. I thought, oh, life looks good on paper, right? I've got a wonderful husband, beautiful kids, a great job with a great mission. I'm doing great, except for the fact that inside, it didn't feel great. I felt like my mojo had gone out. I felt like, wow, where's that person who used to walk into a room and with exuberant energy, and when people would say, hey, Jenean, how are you? I would say, I'm fine, I'm great, I'm wonderful. And I could share my energy with other people. But what happened to me over time, slowly, is that people would ask me how I was, and I would reflect back them without that energy, I'm fine. And I started recognizing, wow, where did that spark go? Where did that fire go? And then I became sick, and I was drained of energy, and I was drained of my vitality. And so many people kept telling me, no, Jenean, you just have nonprofits disease, which I didn't quite believe. And ultimately what happened is that I ended up with a diagnosis that was going to require me to change my lifestyle and change my stress levels and kind of get off the fast track for a little while. And it was then that I dedicated myself to that body of research that I collected over the years that taught me how to stay out of the camp of people where they were self-sabotaging, where they were getting in their own way, where they were keeping themselves from success, and put me in the camp of these people who were seeing success at every turn. And what I began to notice is that that success could happen in any area of their life. I mean, I was looking for more vitality and health, but other people are looking for greater finances and resources, or moving from a job to an entrepreneurial career, or getting that relationship that they want. It kind of doesn't matter. So I dedicated myself to that body of research. I left my big girl job and I dove right in. I focused long and hard on what was in that, I keep doing this. It's because it was actually, I collected it in a beach bag. I would throw in articles and books and web addresses and notes that I had taken. And I dedicated myself to that body of research. And what I found was that there were answers there. There were ways, there were techniques for me to get better, for me to get healthier. I started taking on marketing clients, building marketing plans, another subfield of mine, for clients to cobble together an income. And I started recognizing, all right, if these theories and projects and things that I'm implementing in my life is making my life better, won't it make their life better too as they go to implement those marketing plans? And so I started trying some of this inner game work on with my clients. And what I recognized was, I'm sad to say, it didn't matter how great my marketing plans were. What mattered was whether or not they had the ability to really drive them forward and not trip over themselves 30 yards out of the starting gate, or not keep themselves from quitting 3 feet from gold. And so I started implementing the inner game with my clients, and they did better. And all the while my life did better. And all of a sudden I recognized, oh my gosh, I have something here. And over the years, I created a system because I recognized that there are certain things that you need to do in a certain pattern, in a certain way. And I let the exercises that didn't work fall to the cutting room floor, and I built up the ones that really did make a difference, and I created a system. And today I teach globally from that system, and I've got coaches under me that teach that system to their clients. And it's from that I want to share with you today some of the key ways that we get in our own way, what to do about them, and of course how to keep ourselves out of this camp and put ourselves in the successful camp. Now I'm going to give you as much as I can in the short time that we have today, and then I promise toward the end, I'm going to show you how you can take today's useful information and turn it into lasting transformation. Many years ago, one of the best things that I ever did when I was in my early 20s was travel. And travel opened up my eyes for me. You know, it brought me to my home discipline of sociocultural anthropology that informs everything that I do today. And I was very fortunate to go to school and live in the United Kingdom and live and work in Bavaria in Germany. I traveled and worked extensively throughout India and the Middle East. And I saw things there that allowed me to recognize some of these principles of success when down the road later I learned about them and started implementing them in my life. And there are actually two concept pairs from anthropology that I want to share with you today that are going to be instrumental in helping us recognize where we've been self-sabotaged, where we've been holding ourselves back, and why some of our results aren't getting us where we want to go today. The first concept pair that I want to share with you is the difference between ethnocentrism and cultural relativism. Now, cultural relativism is what I think, my audience tends to say, and I tend to say, we fall into this camp of. And this is when you look at another culture, or you look at another way of doing things, and you say, okay, that might look different than the way that I do things, but it's relative to that culture, so I'm not going to place any judgment on it. I'm not going to put my own righteousness into that, into my interpretation of this other way of doing things. Now, the opposite of that is ethnocentrism. And ethnocentrism is when we do judge other people. We do judge other ways of doing things, but we do judge other cultures. And when we judge them, we are confirming our own beliefs. And I'm going to be talking a lot today about beliefs and the role that it plays in either propelling us forward or holding us back. And it's important for us to know that there are times in our lives when we place judgment on other people or other things or other ways of doing something because it's not normal for us, because it's never been tried before, because it just seems a little funny or a little bit weird. And because of that, because of these beliefs that are holding on to judgments, we sometimes hold ourselves back. And so I want you to keep these key components in your mind as you think about what it is that you judge. Now, again, I get most of the people that I work with, myself included, tend to say, well, I don't judge. I don't put my judgments onto other people. I've got a pretty clear path there. No, you know what, Jenean, I don't think this is where the trouble lies. But let me just illuminate for you some of the stuff that I'm talking about with this. We have a way of throwing our beliefs onto other people all the time. And we do it without really meaning harm. But when we do it, we create patterns for other people because our beliefs are enculturated to us. Now, first of all, let me remind you, beliefs aren't necessarily true. Beliefs are just your conviction in the truth of something. And if you're convicted in the truth of something, your brain will make you behave in conjunction with that truth. So another way to say that is that you have a level of beliefs, and you will always behave in accordance with those beliefs. So let's have a really good look at those beliefs and whether or not these beliefs are serving us in our behaviors and therefore our results, or if they're holding us back. And this is where judgment comes into place. I'll give you a great example. I've got this little guy at home. He's not so little. He's actually like this tall now. But when he was little, when he was about in third grade or so, he was so wiggly. He was moving all the time, and his teachers would tell him, if you don't settle down, if you don't stop moving, you're never going to learn anything. And so, this gets told to him time and time again. And after a while, he starts getting embedded into his belief system subconsciously that movement means not learning. Now, today, he is an amazing mountain biker, and he goes out onto the trails. And you better believe that this mama wants this kid to know for a fact that he can learn things while he's moving. And he's going out and he's getting sponsorships, and he's winning races, and he's pushing the limits because he's learning. But he had to get past that programming. He had to get past that belief system that chattered away in his subconscious mind that said, no, you're never going to learn something as long as you're moving. So can you see how sometimes this judgment that gets placed on us, it gets gifted to us? It's not really a gift, but because people do it, they mean well. None of his teachers thought that they would be causing problems for him down the road. And the same with us. We have mistaken beliefs, and because of judgments that were placed on us, it's not our fault. Culture does its best, but sometimes culture fails us, and it happens in ways that we can't even see. And so I want you to start thinking about some of those judgments that you're placing on other ways of doing things. Because here's the trick, folks. If you want results in your life today that are different than the results that you have always had, you're going to have to behave in new ways. You just have to. And if you're going to behave in new ways, you have to challenge those beliefs that have been informing your behavior all along. And so you do need to look at things in a way that you withhold judgment. Some of the stuff you're going to have to do is going to seem weird, is going to seem different. It's going to seem like, oh yeah, that's appropriate for them. It's not appropriate for me. And I'm not saying you have to challenge your values, your deep lying principles in life. I just want you to think about the idea that challenging your beliefs of what you're convicted in is true might just be holding you back. The second concept pair out of anthropology is so deeply embedded with the first. I want to share that with you now. It's the difference between the emic perspective and the eidic perspective. And these words are EMIC. The emic perspective is the insider's perspective, your own perspective. The eidic perspective is the outsider's perspective. Now, as an anthropologist, if I'm going to go into a new culture, as I often do, I work with businesses in enriching their workplace culture. So as an anthropologist, when I look at a culture as a group of people who share their behaviors and attitudes and beliefs and values, and then they build traditions around them. As I look at them, I am the outsider. I am taking an eidic perspective in looking at this culture. It's also extremely valuable as an anthropologist to have informants. Somebody embedded already in the culture who can tell me things about that particular culture that I would never know just by observing. And it's that interplay between the emic perspective and the eidic perspective that is incredibly valuable. Now let's talk about the eidic perspective for just a minute. The eidic perspective is extremely valuable because contrast is easy to see. I can go into another culture and I can say, oh, in my home, I know that making coffee, looks like this. This coffee maker looks a certain way, and it comes out a certain way, and I put certain things into it that appeal to my palate. But I can tell you, I've been in countries before where they have served me coffees that didn't taste anything like this roasted bean concoction that I've had in my life. And I can see the contrast with it. And through that contrast, I can describe that delta. I can describe that difference. And it's quite easy for me to grasp. It's quite easy for me to see. Contrary to that, in the emic perspective, even though it is incredibly valuable, I need both perspectives in order to understand a holistic view of a culture. Incidentally, let me just pause right here and identify. When I'm doing professional and personal development with a person, I'm looking at their culture of one. We all have our own attitudes, behaviors, beliefs, and values that inform our outcomes. Just as a group of people have their attitudes, behaviors, beliefs, and values as a group that inform their outcomes. And so they're both really cultures. The individual is really just the culture of one. So with that information, I need that insider's perspective, but there's a fatal flaw with the insider's perspective. The emic perspective has a problem. And here it is. You know, if I'm going to ask you, what is it that you see right now in front of you? And you look around and you say, well, I see a computer monitor maybe, and I see a presenter in the computer monitor, or if you pan out, you know, maybe you see a desk or a room that you're in, maybe some other people in the room. And we could go on and on and on through this for a good long time before any one of you says, oh yeah, I can also see the nose on my face. Herein lies the problem with the emic perspective, is that what becomes usual to you, what you see on a regular basis, also becomes invisible. And it's in the invisible where oftentimes we find areas of self-sabotage. And so as you embark on this program of change, you know, of up-leveling yourself, up-leveling your results, getting out of your own way, you're going to have to start seeing the unseen. You're going to start having to notice where you're getting in your own way that has been invisible to you before, just like your nose has been there all along. But you just don't see it because your brain is doing something particular about filtering it out. I'll tell you more about that in just a moment. So as we step into this big, juicy program of change that you have the ability to do in order to up-level your results in any area of your life, here's what I want you to do, or what I want you to start with. I want you to just shine a spotlight on your attitudes about many different things in your life where you have results that you want differences. I want you to shine a spotlight on your behaviors. What are you doing? How are you acting and reacting to different things? I want you to look at your beliefs, your conviction in the truth of things. I also want you to look at your values. What are these standards that you deem as quality, as worthwhile in your life? And I don't just want you to do this inventory, this big written body of work. I don't just want you to do it in the area of results that you want. I want you to take a holistic perspective, right? Another anthropological term. I want you to look at it from many different angles, because what you'll start to see is you will start to see sabotage in one area of your life that you think has nothing to do with the results that you want to change. And you'll start seeing patterns. You'll start seeing a belief, a mistaken belief, a hidden belief in one area of your life that is informing the results in another area of your life. And we love, you know, look, I'm a daughter of American culture. In my culture, I get it. We love compartmentalizing our lives. We love saying, nope, when I show up at work, I'm going to leave my home relationship where it is. I'm going to leave my health aside. I'm going to just focus on what's at hand. But we run into problems because where we hold ourselves back sometimes has nothing to do with work. Let me give you an example of this. I have clients come in who want greater results with their financial return on investment of the activities that they're doing in their entrepreneurial lives, or even in their professional lives if they work for a company. And they are working hard, and they are really dedicating themselves to building wealth in this way. And when we dig down and we start looking at their attitudes and behaviors and beliefs and values, for an example, some people have beliefs about money and in like the way that they were raised in their childhood, some beliefs that were given to them, gifted to them, right, by their culture, by their parents, by their teachers, by their media, by their church, by whoever it was that was doing a good job at raising them. But they gifted them with little ideas, little beliefs that said something like, money doesn't grow on trees. You're going to have to work hard for it. Money's the root of all evil. That's one, right? Don't you love that? Wealthy people do bad things. This is a big thing. And what's chattering away in their subconscious mind is this idea that, well, if you work hard at work and you're doing a really good job at building up your wealth at work, you might become a bad person too. But it's super hard to earn money because money doesn't grow on trees. You have to work hard for your money. Your subconscious mind will actually make you choose the hard path to get it. Like, this is seeming too easy. Let me throw some roadblocks in the way to make it hard, because that's what your belief system says has to happen in order for you to make money. So wouldn't you want to know, if that was your goal, wouldn't you want to know what's chattering on in your subconscious mind and that's holding you back from those results, so that you can rewrite the programming in your brain? You know, now we're bringing in some of the neurosciences. I'll tell you more about that in a minute. You can rewrite the programming in your brain for new beliefs that do serve you, that do say something like, oh yeah, wealth is possible for you. You will do good things with this money. You know, you are a good person, and can translate that without any chatter of, yeah, but you were always taught this other thing. So that's what we're talking about when I'm saying I want you to do this great big inventory. So many people start on this program of change, and they don't look at why is it that you have the results that you have today. Because those were informed on a set of attitudes, behaviors, beliefs, and values that got you to where you are. And again, if you want new results, if you want to change what you have today or tomorrow, you're going to have to challenge those. You're going to have to challenge the judgments that you have about those. And you're going to have to see the unseen in them. I want to tell you a little bit more about, as I promised, the neurosciences that inform some of this. And much of the research that I've been following goes back about 20 years ago in Bethesda, Maryland, at the National Institutes of Health, when there was a great body of research. There were programs researching exactly what's happening in your brain at the exact moment that you're making a decision. So when your brain is going through a decision-making process, you know, should I choose the apple or should I choose the donut? What's going on in your brain? And this was well-funded research at the time, of course, because of our market economy, which is such a beautiful thing. And what they found was that 20% of the decision-making process that's being filtered through your brain was being filtered through logic. It's being filtered through your rational brain. And this is where we pull in those, you know, yes and no, pros and cons. What are the statistics that prove this to be true? You know, what's the validation scientifically that makes this a good decision to make? You know, we start pulling in nutrition studies between the apple and the donut, and, you know, all of this. 20%, that's it. The other 80% of the decision-making process in your brain is getting filtered through your emotions. So have you ever felt this? You've been like on track to make a sound, logical decision, and all of a sudden you go the other way because it just felt different. It didn't feel right. And we will override logic over and over because of our emotions. You know, this leads to something that psychologists call the confirmation bias. It's very real. We can have evidence in our lives coming in that logically we should believe X, but it challenges our own belief system. And so our emotions come up that say, yeah, no, but believing X feels bad. I'm going to discount the evidence that you're showing me, and I'm going to hold on to my belief. Now, this research has continued. The field of the neurosciences has been so robust and so amazing in the last 20 years. We've learned more in this small chunk of time than we've ever known about the brain prior to that. And this research of what happens in the decision-making process stands today. It doesn't change except for the fact that the breakdown is no longer 20% to 80%. It's now about 4% to 96%. Depending on which study you're focusing on, researchers now are recognizing that this breakdown really is the difference between the smaller 4% piece of your conscious brain and the 96% of your subconscious brain. And that's pretty fascinating. When we start looking at this, let me talk to you about what is going on in each parts of our brain. Our conscious brain, 4%, it's actually no slouch. You're using your conscious brain right now to synthesize the information that I'm giving to you. But deep under the surface is the level of your beliefs. It's the level of your habits. The conscious brain, the small part, is the level of your behaviors and the level of willpower and gumption and that sort of like determination that you drum up once. But all of that can get knocked off balance because of that larger chunk, 96% of your subconscious mind. It's fascinating work. And your subconscious mind's role is to act as a filter. Its role is to maximize pleasure and minimize pain, and it does that by letting in only the information into your conscious brain that is informed by your beliefs. And this is where that confirmation bias kicks in. You know, if your brain doesn't want you to challenge your beliefs, it won't let the information that would otherwise challenge it, would otherwise change it, it won't let it in. So just as your subconscious mind is telling you right now, don't worry about looking at the nose on the end of your face. You don't need that information. That's not important to you based on your belief system. I know you're all saying, like, would you please stop pointing it out? I need to stop looking at it. I do the same thing. But your brain is telling you at all times, your subconscious mind is allowing in information that serves you in the level of your goals and not allowing information that doesn't serve you. Doesn't that sound lovely? If only that were true. What's really happening is that your subconscious mind is keeping some information out. It's filtering it out. It's not letting it into your consciousness, even that information that does help you in the direction of your dreams. I mean, our life here is so rich and filled with possibility and opportunity, and so much of it gets filtered out because your brain is saying, nah, not important. You don't need to know this. You don't need to go there. And then what happens is that your brain, your subconscious brain, is going to constantly look for evidence that its beliefs are true. And so while it's discounting that some beliefs, you know, some evidence isn't true because it doesn't follow into your beliefs, it will be looking for evidence that its beliefs are true. And do you know where it finds evidence? It finds them in your behaviors. So in other words, your subconscious mind, your beliefs are making you behave in a certain way. And the second that you behave in a way that's in accordance with your beliefs, your brain goes, oh, haha, I knew it, it's true. And so it reaffirms that belief, which makes you behave in that way, which reaffirms the belief. And all of a sudden you have a feedback loop. This is a habit. And if you want to break your habits, if you want new results in your life, and you have to behave in a new way to create those results in your life, you're going to have to break that chain, that feedback loop of your beliefs. And so what I want to ask you is, what do you believe is true? And what do you want to believe is true? And then I'm going to have you look at that evidence that that belief is true. I want to give you a couple of examples of where in my work I've seen the change happen on the level of beliefs, but not so much on the level of behaviors. The first example comes from Bangalore, India. I was working for a non-governmental organization there doing program evaluation, and they were doing great work in the area of HIV and AIDS prevention among vulnerable populations. And when I got there, they were throwing their hands up in the air and they said, Jenean, we just don't understand it. We are handing out hundreds of thousands of condoms in the marketplaces where the sex workers work. And we're still seeing HIV incidence rise. What's going on? Well, it didn't take me long. I went down with a translator into marketplaces and I started speaking with some of these young women working in sex work. And one of them said to me early on, she says, "Oh, we don't understand how you can expect us to swallow one of those nasty things every time we have sex." And I thought, okay, we're onto something. Herein lies the problem. So we could be telling them, change your behavior, use a condom, use a condom, use a condom, till we're blue in the face. But until we challenged that basic belief of how a condom is used, nothing was going to change. Now, this was just the first of the beliefs that needed to be challenged. There were also things like, how am I going to feed my children if I'm not participating in this level of sex work? How am I going to support myself if I don't do exactly what my client says? And it was there that we could do really good work in preventing HIV and AIDS for these young women and for their clients, but it wasn't on the level of behaviors. If we stayed on the level of behavior, nothing would get done, and that's in fact what they were starting to see. Fast forward many years, I'm back in the United States and I am doing market research and market programs for clients. And I was working with a young man who was a massage therapist, and he was at a point in his business where he had sort of lost clientele throughout the years, and he was kind of getting desperate. He needed more clients, and he was about ready to have to give up this entrepreneurial lifestyle that he had come to love and go get a job, which he kind of didn't want to do. So he was asking me to create some client attraction work for him, which I was doing, and it wasn't particularly difficult work. You know, he had just let some former clients slide. He could recapture. There was very specific things that he would do that would work to get him clients. But week after week, I was showing up and he wasn't doing them. So I started pulling at some of that inner game stuff, and we finally get to a place where he says, you know what, Jenean, I recognize that if I do these things that you're asking me to do, I'm going to have so many clients that now I'm not going to have any time left over for me and for my kids and my wife. And I don't want to do that because I don't want to lose myself. And so he was participating in self-sabotaging behaviors because he had that fear. And that was okay for us because really that's just the point that we go from client attraction into client maintenance mode. But it wasn't until we figured out exactly what he wanted that we could get to that place, and to figure out the beliefs that were informing those behaviors that we could get to that place. So I want to ask you, what do you want? What is it that you want? Do you want greater health and vitality like I wanted when I started with all of this? Do you want more clients like my massage therapist client? Do you want to be respected at work and stand in your strength? Do you want greater relationships? Whatever it is, I want you to get clear on what you want, and then I want you to get clear on those beliefs that are informing what you want. And I want you to look at the evidence that's also informing what you want. Now, I've been talking a lot about the individual and the changes that we have as individuals. And I just want to briefly mention the idea that these principles change cultures as well. You know, I mentioned before the work that I do in workplaces with workplace culture. And I want you to think for just a moment in the other subcultures that you have, you know, your family or teams that you may be on or groups that you may be working with. And I want you to think about the idea that you have your own sets of attitudes, beliefs, behaviors, values. And then when you have a group, you've got traditions that add with it. And what happens in larger workplace culture is that somebody will have their beliefs about what's possible. And so oftentimes it's like a CEO or an executive that thinks about what's possible and develops the mission and the vision and the values for their company. And then many lower layers down in their company, there are people that are supposed to implement that mission and vision and values. But they have a different set of beliefs of what's possible for them. I'm working today for a Fortune 100 company that has a disconnect there that's caused a productivity problem. And I just want you to know that right now, you are beginning the process as you start looking at your beliefs, as you start looking at how you're informing your behavior. You're beginning that process of understanding that what's possible for you may be different than what's possible for someone else. And if you want to work together, maybe it's just you and your spouse, or maybe it's you and your child, or maybe it's you and your work team. I want you to think about the tension that's caused by any kind of disconnect between a belief of what's possible for you. So as you embark on a level of change, usually when people get to this piece, they get to this point in the game and they start recognizing, oh my gosh, I have left potential on the table, and that's no longer good enough for me. I just want to let you know that it's okay, it's possible. But here's another trick that you can do to start identifying some of the ways that you're getting in your own way. And that is, I want you to get crystal clear on your fears. Now, if you've followed my work for any moment of time, you know that I dwell in possibility. I mean, I live in positivity. And so to go back and look at your fears seems kind of unusual for me. But fears can inform us in where we are getting in our own way, like many other things can't. It's one of the things that we can do to get at the heart of where we're sabotaging. Do you know that we are born with only two fears, the fear of loud noises and the fear of falling? They're hardwired into our reflexes. Every other fear that we have has been taught to us. And if we can learn fears from our culture, we can certainly unlearn them. And so I want you to look at your fears and I want you to think about, is this true? Or is this perhaps a story I've been telling myself? Many people in the business world have some funny relationship with the fear of success and the fear of failure and how that plays out for them. And it's usually not a surface fear either. Usually it's informed by chatter in their subconscious mind based on a hidden belief. I'll give you an example of this. I was working with a woman who had patients, and she had developed a medical practice that she did not like. All of a sudden, she had surrounded herself with, jackasses that she didn't like working with, and she couldn't figure out why she hated her job so much. And she was thinking about switching fields, after going through so much schooling, and she wanted to love her job again. And so we did some of this work with her, and what we recognized was she had a deep fear of her own authenticity. She was afraid that if she used her own voice in her marketing or in attracting clients, that she wouldn't get clients. And the reason was, pardon me, she had been taught the language of business by the men in her family. She had a very powerful father and brothers who had taught her how to do business. And so she felt like in order to attract patients, in order to attract clients, and in order to build a successful business, she had to be like them. She had to talk like them. She had to develop marketing materials like they would, or like they did in their businesses. And as she did that, she attracted clients that were perfect for her dad, for her brothers, but not perfect for her. They didn't feed her soul and her desire to go out and help people in the world. And what was presenting itself as a fear of success. And it also would show up occasionally for her as a fear of failure. When we really dug down deep into it, we recognized it was a fear of authenticity. And so once you overlay good, solid business strategy onto that inner work, and you start recognizing that, no, when you are authentic in your own marketing materials and the way that you operate in the world, that's when you resonate with the kind of people who you want to work with in the first place. So have a good look at your fears and see if you can't tease out the unseen in some of those fears as well. But here's the thing, if you're ready to embark on a program of change and you're interested in change, you think, yeah, this might be right for me. This kind of work might be good. I might want to learn a little bit more about this. Let me just bless and release you right here and now. Because the problem is, when you're interested in change and you think, I'm going to dip my toe in, what happens is that external forces, whatever that is, the external environment will come and knock you off your path. It always does. And when the external forces, like you're sick, you're tired, your kid is sick, there's been a change at work in management, there's been a policy change, the weather is bad, your car didn't start, I don't care what it is, some kind of external force knocks you off your path, you will sink to the level of your beliefs, and you will start behaving like you always have. And if you're interested in change and you tiptoe into it, and then you get knocked off your course and you sink to the level of your beliefs, do you know what you've done? You've provided your brain with more evidence that it can't happen, that change isn't there for you, that it's not possible for you. You've just been chipping away at the veneer of your self-confidence by giving yourself evidence that change isn't right for you. That kind of success and that kind of growth, that might be good for somebody else, but it's not okay for you. And so if you're interested in change, you can stop watching right now. Let me release you to that. This isn't for you. But if you're committed to change, that's who I want to talk with. If you feel like, okay, it's time for me to challenge my limiting beliefs. It's time for me to see new results in my life. It's time for me to stop getting in my own way. It's time for me to stand in my strength and become the powerful and recognized leader that I'm meant to be. And if you want to be committed to change, let me share with you some of the larger pieces of what I work with when I'm working with clients to help them stand in their strength. So what I've shared with you today, some of these anthropological principles that allow us to see the unseen, that allow us to challenge our judgments, and allow us to figure out where in our brains we are getting in our way. The next step, once you've figured that out, is to gain absolute clarity on what you want. I call this your lighthouse. My book is called Finding Your Lighthouse, a leadership guide to navigating change. And it's because when there's a beacon out there in the dark, you need to be able to see what that is with clarity, whether you get knocked off your path or not. And here's the hint, folks, you will. Everybody does. You get knocked off your path. It's one of the problems of traditional strategic planning is, you think that you know all of the steps to get from here to there, but you don't, because you need to know the steps to get back on the path as well. And so that clarity comes from figuring out your purpose, your passion, your calling, stepping into your leadership and knowing skills such as setting boundaries, how to have difficult conversations, how to communicate with people from a place of value. This is the kind of clarity that I'm talking about. Then once you have that, once all of that is clear and you've got it in place, then you need to know the tools specific to rewiring your brain. That connection between your beliefs and your behaviors is solid in the wiring in your brain. If you've heard of Hebb's law, it's the neurons that fire together, wire together. You need to do the exact things in place to challenge those connections, those neural connections, and wire in new beliefs that do serve you, so that external forces can come and knock you off your path, and it just doesn't matter because you are on that path and you are headed in a specific direction, and you have addressed all of the places that you've self-sabotaged, and you've dealt with it, and you have a plan to keep that in place. And then the final big step, the big piece of this, is all about creating a lifestyle of change. You know, it's the little things that we do on a day-to-day basis that knock us off our path, that allow self-sabotage to creep in. It doesn't just come from that level of beliefs that you recognize in the beginning. It comes from culture. And there are places where external forces are going to try to knock us off our path that we can do something about. We can have a little more control over our environment and a little bit more control over our habits and the things that we've ritualized in our lives, that we can build programs that serve us instead of knocking us down. And that's when we turn all of these steps into creating a lifestyle of high performance. And that's what I want from you. And so if you feel like this has been enlightening to you, and you feel like, yeah, you know what, I think I would be interested in knowing that next step. I would be interested in knowing, where is it that I am self-sabotaging? How am I getting in my own way, and what to do about it? I would like to invite you to a Plan for Success strategy session with me, one-on-one, where we can sit down and we can talk about exactly that. Where is it that you're getting in your own way, and what to do about it? Now, look, I am busy, and I don't give free strategy sessions away lightly. This is a $500 value that I'd like to give it to you for free if you qualify. And so I'm going to be inviting you to qualify for a strategy session. Again, if you're committed to change, if you feel like working with me is right for you, let's have a conversation. Let's see if we're the right fit. You know, working with me is not for everyone, and I get that, and that's okay. I want to work with the people who are action takers, who are committed, and who know that getting out of their own way and finally standing in their strength and taking ownership of the land that they're occupying is right for them. That's who I want to have conversations with. And so if you think that that's you, I clear space for 3 of these conversations a week. And I want to invite you to apply for one of those. And so I'm going to be, if you got this email, or if you got this video via email, I'm going to be sending you an invitation to apply for that strategy session. If you happened onto this video because someone shared it with you, I want to invite you to go to standinyourstrength.com. And if you scroll down on the homepage, you'll see a button where you can apply for a strategy session with me. Go ahead and fill that out. Because really what I want for you all is I want you to be dwelling in possibility, just like I do. And I want you to start seeing the world around you through the lens of what's possible and what's next. That's where it gets exciting, and that's where it gets really fun. And I'd love to work with you on that adventure for yourselves. So with that, thank you so much for being here with me today. Please go ahead and fill out an application for the strategy session. I'd love to work with you. I'd love to talk with you and see how we can apply this to your world as well. You can go to standinyourstrength.com if you don't have the direct link. And it's been great chatting with you here today. Cheers.